lot of changes. Taylor McHargue, CBS and ESPN, joins us on 365 Sports. Let's start with where were you and what was your story on National Signing Day, Taylor?
Oh, man. I don't know if I've ever told you guys my recruiting story. I was committed to play at Iowa State for Gene Chizik, and Gene Chizik left to go to Auburn. And when he called me to tell me he was leaving, he said, I think you're going to have a great career. It's just not going to be in the SEC. So I was not going to Auburn with him. And I ended up decommitting and committing to Houston for a period, and then ended up flipping to Rice at the last minute. So I played at Vista Ridge in North Austin, and I remember being very relieved when signing day got there because recruiting was felt like it had gone on for a very long time, and was happy that chapter was over.
Taylor, the CFP released their rankings last night. This is the one where I think people can maybe legitimately freak out a little bit about because, there's not a lot of places to move. What is your opinion on a 3-loss Alabama ranked so far ahead of 2 10-2 Big 12 teams who both had fantastic years?
Yeah, it does feel like the Big 12 and the ACC are really being penalized for not having one of the criteria that the committee talked about really valuing is the top 25 wins, and also wins for teams that are in what look like they will be in the playoff. And my issue with these 3-loss SEC teams is I don't think there's enough value given to the losses by those teams. And I said this last night. I know you asked about the Big 12, but I'm going to use SMU as the example, sitting at 11-1, where there's a chance if they lose close to Miami at 2 losses, they are penalized for having played in their conference championship. Now, this assumes that that the committee holds true to the fact that they wouldn't drop Alabama out. But to me, Alabama's loss against Vanderbilt is worse than even Miami's loss at Syracuse. And so I think the committee has sort of selectively chosen certain data. I just don't think these losses by an SEC that there is no dominant SEC team this year. It's sort of been a round robin of those top 5 or 6 teams that have taken turns beating one another. And it feels like because of that, the conferences that have suffered have been the ACC and the Big 12.
Taylor, your thoughts about Arizona State, Iowa State, the matchup itself, and whoever wins, there's a chance, of course, they would be a part of the college football playoff, but you just never know. Nothing would surprise me on Sunday, but one of them is going to go 11-2 and have a win against the other team too. What are your thoughts about the matchup with what Leavitt's doing at Arizona State, Scadaboo at Arizona State? They do lose Tyson, which is a huge loss for this game, and then what Iowa State does, which is kind of like grind people up, and Rocco Beck playing very well.
Yeah, it's 2 teams that I think the stories of their season have been a little bit different. I think Arizona State was sort of a feel-good story, and then somewhere around the middle of the year, or maybe at the end of October, I think everybody realized this is not just a team that is going to be a feel-good story that ends up at 7 wins, 8 wins, that this is a very legitimate contender to win the Big 12 and make it to the college football playoff. I think Scadaboo, their ability to run the football, I think that's going to be huge for them because that travels, right? It doesn't matter where you go. If you can run the football, that helps. And then Iowa State, we had them early in the year, and that felt like a team that was really surging at the first part of the year, and then had some blips in the radar at the midway point, had a couple losses. And you could see the cracks in the armor against Baylor. They were on the ropes at home in Ames and ended up coming out of there with a win, but you could see the cracks in the armor, and they did give up a couple in the middle of the year. But to me, I think the style that Iowa State wants to play, where it's that 5 DBs and they've got that third safety in the middle of the field, I think that defense was designed and built to stop the air raid, stop spread attacks. That's not really what Arizona State is known for right now. It's taking care of the football. It's running the football well. So that's going to be the challenge, and that's what I'm looking for is Iowa State's answer for Scadaboo Do they, how often are they adding that sixth and seventh defender, even eighth defender down into the box to try and slow down the run game? But I think this one, and really all of them, I mean, this is going to be, I think, a really great championship Saturday, because just look down the spreads. I think they're all within a touchdown. And I think this is a great example of, I think we're going to have a lot of really competitive games, and maybe none more so than this one.
Okay, totally hypothetical situation that would never happen to you. But I'm going to ask you. You've got a choice between jumping in front of Cam Scattaboo, Taj Brooks, or Devin Neal to make a tackle. Which one do you pick if you had to pick one?
I think about this like every week where I see a hit in person. I think, I can't believe I ever played this game. I guess I would say Devin Neal, because after having seen him in person, I think he's maybe not, of the three of those, he's the least big. But I mean, I think a hit by any one of those at this point in my life, I'd probably get turned into a fine powder.
A fine powder.
Yeah. Scattaboo and Brooks in particular, especially Scattaboo when you're at the 3-yard line. If it's one of those ones where you're kind of out in space and he's made that move, like that's the last thing I'd want to do, because he's coming, it's going to hurt.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think about, they're playing obviously in the dome, but when you get these cold weather games and you're facing a team that just wants to run the football right at you, those are times where I'm glad that we're in a heated booth.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, if we describe those three as actual animals, what would Neal be? What would, like, Brooks to me would be like a bull. Not that Scattaboo, I don't know.
Scattaboo's a rhino.
Like a rhino.
He's a rhino.
Yeah, absolutely. And Neal, man, like a water buffalo or something?
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Hey, Taylor, did you know that right after your segment, we're going to go from a former Rice quarterback to the new head coach of Rice and Scott Abel?
I love it. Please give him my best. That was, look, he has won everywhere he's been, and the style of offense that he runs, it reminded me some of what Liberty runs, where you're trying to present stress on the defense and stress on defenders with the quarterback run game. And I think that's, the offenses where Rice has been really successful in the past, a lot of times has had a mobile quarterback. That was what I ran the ball quite a bit. And so, look, I think it is a different offense than what Rice has seen the last 2 years, certainly. And so I think that the biggest challenge is going to be, and this is the case everywhere in college football these days, but getting the personnel that he needs in. But I will say there's a renewed sense of urgency within Rice, and I think there's some excitement about Coach Abel.
Yeah, no, it is, and he does. You're right. He has a resume where no matter where he's been, he has won.
So, curious to hear. This just came down. Zach Barnett from Football Scoop. It looks like LSU is going to lose Slade Nagel, who's an offensive assistant to them, and he's going to be the new OC at Houston. Taylor, and he's Willie Fritz's offensive coordinator from Tulane. What do you think about that hire?
Yeah, I like that one a lot. I remember Slade from a couple years ago, it may have been 3 years ago now, that we had a Tulane game, and I like that a lot. I think Coach Fritz, this was an outlier for Houston, and meaning that what I think is going to happen in the future with Coach Fritz. He's another guy that go down his resume. I mean, he's been a head coach for forever, and every stop he's been at, they've won. And I don't think this is going to be any different with Houston. I think not making a bowl this year is not going to be the norm, and I would expect them to. Don't be shocked if very soon, it could even be next year, that Houston is not only bowl eligible but really relevant in the month of November in the Big 12.
All right, I got to ask you about Texas and Georgia. That rematch from earlier in the year when Georgia just jumped all into business and probably spooked Quinn Ewers a little bit, and then held on at the end. They kind of played with their food, and UT started to make some plays. Your thoughts about that one this time? I don't like what I see, and we've even asked this question: Does Georgia play up or down to the competition, which I think is also an excuse? Your thoughts about round two with Georgia and Texas in Atlanta?
I was in the building in Austin when Georgia beat Texas, and from the first snap of the game, when Georgia was on the field on defense, they were bringing the fight to Texas, and you said they spooked Quinn. I think they spooked the entire offensive line as well. Georgia's defensive line dominated that game, made it very uncomfortable for Quinn Ewers. They were the more physical team. And if I'm a Longhorn fan, I'm much more encouraged about this rematch after having seen both sides of the ball up front against A&M, because it was the opposite. They took the fight to A&M, and in a game where Quinn didn't play very well, he had there were some throws that were unbelievable, but he also, his turnover issues and some of the throws that he had that probably should have been turnovers, that was concerning. But the physicality that Texas brought in that matchup a week ago against Texas A&M, I think that's what we should expect to see out of Texas. And for Georgia, they've got the same concern that they've had really all year. Does Carson Beck turn the football over? And that's what I think this is going to come down to. I know that sounds like coach speak and cliche, but between Quinn Ewers and Carson Beck, one of those two, if they make a critical error and a turnover in a bad spot, that could be the difference in this game, because I think it's going to come down to a one-score game. I don't think you're going to see Texas get pushed around like they did the first go-around, but turnovers from both of those quarterbacks have been an issue really all season for Carson Beck and lately for Quinn Ewers. And so that's going to be, I think, what this comes down to.
All right, so I'm sure that when Abel took the job at Rice, he took you to lunch. So being who you are as a Rice grad and alum, what question do you want us to ask him for you?
Oh, that's a great one. I have not had a chance to visit with Coach Abel yet. That's a great question. Ask him if he'll let me be. Ask him if he'll let me do some celebrity play calls at the spring game coming up.
Oh, that's a good thing. I think that'll happen. All right.
No, I haven't had a chance to visit with him yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
All right, buddy. Thanks for your time, Taylor. Enjoy all of the feedback and the insight. Thanks for your time. We'll talk to you again next week.
That sounds great. Thank you, guys.
Taylor McHargue, ESPN and CBS, played at Rice.